Okay, let's dive right in. We are seeing a massive global rush back to nuclear power. You've got governments making huge pledges, corporations are writing enormous checks, but there is a critical bottleneck hiding just beneath the surface, one that could seriously derail this whole nuclear renaissance.
And look, this isn't just some theory anymore. At COP28, you had 22 nations pledge to triple their nuclear capacity. You've got Silicon Valley giants racing to lock down carbon-free power for their AI dreams. All of this massive, growing demand is on a direct collision course with a major roadblock: the fuel supply itself. So what's the new, powerful force behind all this demand? Well, it starts with the absolutely explosive and incredibly power-hungry growth of artificial intelligence. 10 times. Just look at that number. That's the energy difference we're talking about here. And this isn't some small increase. No, this is a fundamental shift in the energy equation for the entire tech world.
Yeah, that's right. Every time you use a generative AI, you're burning through 10 times the power of a simple Google search. So you can see why tech giants like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google need 24/7, rock-solid, reliable power for their massive data centers. They figured out that solar and wind just can't provide that constant base load power. So now they are turning aggressively to nuclear.
Okay, so with all this new demand just surging, why in the world is there a fuel shortage? To really understand the answer, we have to rewind the clock to a single catastrophic event that basically sent the entire industry into a deep freeze for a decade.
The Fukushima disaster back in 2011 sent the uranium price into a complete tailspin. I mean, at just $18 a pound, pretty much no mine on Earth was profitable. So for about a decade, the industry just died. Exploration ground to a halt, huge mines were shuttered, and a whole generation of talent just left for other fields. And the result of that was this massive supply gap. For years, the world was consuming way more uranium than it was mining. We're talking about 50 million pounds more every single year. We filled that gap with what we call secondary supplies, existing inventories and even decommissioned warheads. But that bucket is now empty. It's gone. We are officially in a structural deficit.
But this problem isn't just about geology. It gets way more complicated. This is about geopolitics. The entire nuclear fuel supply chain depends on two critical choke points, and they're controlled by just a handful of nations.
So the first choke point is mining. You have to understand, Kazakhstan is basically the Saudi Arabia of uranium. They produce about 40% of the world's primary supply, but its state-owned mining giant is stumbling. They're cutting production forecasts, and what's worse, a lot of its uranium that's destined for the West has to travel through Russia to get here. Not ideal.
Now, the second choke point, this one is maybe even more critical. It's called enrichment. This is the really high-tech process of turning raw uranium into usable reactor fuel. And Russia's state agency, Rosatom, controls nearly 40% of the entire world's capacity. Think about that. It leaves Western nations in this really embarrassing and dangerous position of relying on a geopolitical rival just to keep their lights on.
So if prices are finally going up, why can't we just, go out and mine more? It's a fair question. Well, this is a crucial point. Unlike oil, where you can bring new supply online in a few months, the lead times in the uranium market, they're measured in decades. Bringing a new uranium mine online is a regulatory and financial nightmare. I mean, the environmental permitting process alone can take anywhere from 7 to 15 years. You need specialized labor that has long since left the industry, and it takes over $1 billion in capital just to get started. You simply can't flip a switch and get new supply. So let's recap. We've got soaring demand, a structural deficit, huge geopolitical risk, and a supply response that moves at a glacial pace. Now, on top of all of that, two final factors are tightening the screws on this market: a totally new kind of buyer and a powerful new emotion: pure panic. A few years ago, this financial vehicle called the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, or SPUT, showed up and completely changed the game. For the first time ever, investors could buy physical pounds of uranium and just lock them away, holding them in a vault. This creates a really powerful supply squeeze. And this is the result. All this material, more than 60 million pounds, will never, ever be used to power a city. It is locked away. And this has forced utilities, the actual companies that need the stuff, to wake up and realize that the cheap, abundant uranium they always relied on is gone for good.
And that realization has triggered a full-blown panic buying phase among the utilities. For years, they just waited around, assuming they could always buy cheap uranium on the open market. Now they are scrambling to sign long-term contracts. And their main concern isn't price anymore, it's security of supply. They just need to get the pounds.
And when you compare this moment to the last big uranium bull market, you realize the fundamentals today are just so much stronger. Back then, prices spiked from $10 to nearly $140 a pound. This time, you've got the brand new AI demand, you've got China building over 30 reactors at once, and you have this huge global push for decarbonization. None of those things existed in 2007.
Ultimately, what's happening in the uranium market is kind of like the canary in the coal mine for the entire energy transition. It's exposing this uncomfortable truth that our digital, AI-powered, green future is completely dependent on a physical, messy, and increasingly scarce extractive industry.
So, the race is officially on. It's a race between the construction of all these new reactors and the depletion of our fuel stockpiles. It's a race between Western energy independence and geopolitical dominance by others. And it really leaves us with a critical question about the stability of this high-tech world we are so rapidly trying to build.